Hey everyone, welcome to Treatment Trends here. It's me, Jacob Lynch, and James Hadlock. Kathy is not able to make it today. She's got some other things going on, but we're very excited to have everyone here. So today we're going to talk about community involvement and how being involved in your community is both effective from a clinical perspective, but also from a business perspective. And I know everyone's got some different feelings on there. So I don't know, James, you want to kick us off in terms of your perspective on centers that you work with or have seen and how they're involved in the communities, what that does for them?
Yeah, I do a presentation where I work with a lot of on the corporate side of things and really looking at addressing mental health and addiction in the workplace. And one of the first things I talk about when I meet with HR, which I think is very relevant for those in the treatment space to understand, is that consumers, they look at products and services differently today than they did 5 years ago. And they demand more convenience. They want it to be easier. And when you think about the trends of what has happened with, Uber and Netflix and what happened with the Blockbusters of the world and what happened with Toys R Us, these juggernauts that are now completely gone, I think it's important for treatment centers to realize that it doesn't matter how big you are, it doesn't matter how long you've been in this space, that no one is immune to what's going on in the ever-changing world of how consumers relate to our products and services. So with that being said, I think that more now than ever, it's important that there is an anchor created within the communities where these treatment facilities reside. I think the days of putting out a blast and trying to cover an entire country or an entire region, I think those days are getting shorter and shorter. And I think the real the value comes in developing a strong relationship within the community, and not just in trying to fill your beds, but in providing a service and a support system. And whether that's through education, whether that's through taking the time and aligning with other services that support these different causes. If we're ignoring that, and I know that it has been ignored in a lot of business models, but if you're ignoring that, you're going to be a Blockbuster in the next 5 years. It's just the way that consumers are looking at our products and services today.
Agreed. Jacob, what do you think?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. There's a difference with the consumers as far as what they care about with their investment or with their products and services out there. Just from my former life in the investing world, you had whole new categories of SR, socially responsible investing. Okay, so people would invest in companies just because they didn't partake in certain things and they took care of their employees in certain ways and they didn't allow certain things to happen, like morally conscious things. So I think it's a no-brainer that every business, every industry is going to, it takes more than just putting out a bottom line. Like, people these days care about what your business does and how they're involved and how they help the world, the community, everything they're around. I think everything that James said there was spot on. Also, I think this whole point to the community involvement sort of speaks to the usual topic of breaking the stigma, right? So you've got NIMBY laws and all these things where in the past people didn't want a treatment center to be around them because of the things that they thought it brought. Well, the more that you can be involved in that community and educate and show that really helping and it's a better thing, and it's very structured and organized and good, and nobody's different because they have some sort of disease or anything, the better I think that is, not only for the community, but for the industry as a whole. And definitely, from my point of view, in an evaluation standpoint, more involved you are, the more a pillar you are of that community, the better employer you are to that community, et cetera. More value is going to be placed on your asset, on your business.
I'm curious, Jacob, on your end, have you had buyers or investors ever ask specific questions around that kind of community engagement, or, where people are coming and finding them from?
So it's not often. I won't say it's the top 5 questions, but many have. It's just later down the road of them doing their diligence. What will happen, though, is if they find out that it's not a good asset in the community, it doesn't have a good reputation, then it's automatically off their radar. They're not going to consider it. they don't necessarily ask it right away, but they are concerned or curious about the referral sources in regards to a community involvement. So does that community really respect their clinical expertise and what they do and how they run their business? And if they're getting referrals from other professionals around there in the community, then most definitely that's asked about, and there's a big premium and value placed on it.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a bit on a previous episode, but, I've worked with programs where you go in and they have no local referral base, right? Almost none of their patients are coming from a 30, even sometimes 100-mile radius around their programs. And to me, that's always a big red flag. Like, what are you doing? You're not having people come from your own community. Why not, right? Is there something wrong with it? Is there word on the street that that's not a good place to go? Like, why do you have to pull nationally all the time? I don't know if anyone else has a comment on kind of that feeling that's given off when you don't see that local engagement or those local admissions.
Amen. I mean, I agree with you. We kind of spoke about that when we were talking about localization, but I mean, for sure, if your patients aren't, there's nothing wrong with getting patients from all over the country or the world, but I just mean if you're not able to attract the ones that are next to you, why is that? If there's a legitimate reason, then fine. But if there's not, then you're wondering why you can't attract those that don't have to travel far. Now, some might want to get away from the environment that they've been used to, and maybe that's what's put them in a position they're in. But for the most part, I want to make sure that, I'm respected enough as my business, so forth, in my own community, that my neighbors, my friends, my family, et cetera, that are around me want to use me to get well.
I'll add a few more comments to that. If you really break down if we go back to that conversation we had about localization, think about some of the pieces that you're not able to fill in when someone comes from 5 states over or across the country. When you think about the family unit, and there's no way to really have that integration. There's no way to provide better support. When you think of continuum of care, if I've got someone, if I'm in Florida and I've got somebody flying from California, and they're going to go back, to their old stomping grounds, what kind of a program are they going to be in? What kind of an IOP? What kind of therapy? There all those questions that it's so much better if you have that ethos where they can be a part of that continuum of care and really have that anchor within that local marketplace. And when you start thinking about all those other support systems, whether it's 12-step meetings or alumni programs, all those things people will miss out on. I am a product of that happening, and it was just one state away. But when I left that one program, it felt like I was just kind of at starting point again. And I didn't have all of those different pieces to really pull from, whether it was, my family, whether it was alumni events and those type of things. And so I think there is so much value from a branding aspect. I think from what you're talking about, Jacob, with people care more today about what companies care about than ever before. And if you want to look at some of the other data, millennials that are looking for a job, if you're looking for people to cover some of those frontline positions, and a lot of millennials that may be looking for a job, one of the top things they look for is, do you have a cause? Is there something that you care about? And I think the assumption sometimes is because we're in the healthcare industry and we are essentially helping other people, I think sometimes we forget that there's still got to be a deeper cause even underneath the business model itself. And so when millennials know that you're doing something in the community and giving back, it's going to be easier to recruit and get more people to work for your company. It's not about just the dollars that they're making. They want to know that they're making a difference. And I think we've got to go even further because we're in an industry where we are already helping people. So that's almost a given, which means you've got to kind of take it to an extra mile.
Yeah, I think all those comments are spot on. We obviously have a lot of different clients across the country, and when we go in and do like a consulting project for a new client, one of the things they're always asking is like, well, how can we do better, right? And one of our number one answers is always localize. The best clients we have a client in Seattle, right? And they have over 150 therapists now. It's an outpatient program. 150 therapists. We admit 125 patients a week, 125 new patients a week into that program. I mean, it's just massive. The numbers are massive, but I mean, when we first started working with them, they didn't have that. And what they've done through their outreach, through our outreach, is just local strategies, local awareness, local campaigns, and then obviously providing very quality services so that it just builds. But you can definitely make your program work. And again, if I look at the clients that we have that are always the most successful, it's the one where we're doing local work. We're doing local campaigns, they're locally involved, whether it's Texas, Wisconsin, Washington, doesn't matter. Like, these clients are consistently full. And then people are always like, well, how do they do that? How do they do that? Or what are you guys doing for them? What's working for them? Well, we've built a really strong local presence for years, right? I mean, it wasn't like a 2-month campaign, right? We've been working with these guys for sometimes 3+ years, and that's brought them along a really strong consistency. But I think back to some of the podcast episodes that I've done with, like, we had Novus Detox on the show, right, in Florida. And we just had Ted Bender on the show from the Treehouse in Texas. Same thing, right? They are very strongly involved in the communities. They do a lot of local PR, a lot of local sponsorships. And it's been very helpful for them in reducing stigma, in helping people find treatment, and then obviously in driving the revenue because of that. But they put the mission first, and I think, James, that's what you're talking about. I worked at Disney for a couple of years, right? And that was always our value chain, as we called it, was you treat your employees really well. The employees will treat the customers or the guests or the patients really well. And then that will lead to business outcomes, right? But your business outcomes are a result. They're not a driver of that entire process. The process is driven by your mission, your people, your customers, and then good business just results from it. Other guys, I know you guys have also had quite a lot of experience with that kind of value-driven belief system within companies you've run or companies you've worked for. What are your thoughts there?
I agree with you. That's always the easiest and best way to go about it. Treating your staff, your employees, your workforce, your human capital the best first, and letting that rub off and leading by example, and then teaching them the ways to treat patients or customers. I think an interesting conversation would be what you just started there, to talk about the ways that someone could get involved in their community. So I've seen it a number of different ways. One, I've never run a center, so I'm not the expert on this, but my thought would be a lot of education or free information to people, events where I can say, hey, this is how big the problem of addiction is. And I know a lot of people struggle with it. Here's the signs, and here's how we can help you very anonymously. It's not going to be an issue. We can help you. Here's what we call it, being straightforward and educating your local community. And then I think a big portion of that, or a big buy-in to that, would be to get your alumni to be very big proponents of you in that community.
Yeah, I want to make a comment there on that. There's kind of two pieces. One, I can't tell you how many times we go into a program and look at their business development team, and there's no value being given whatsoever in the outreach that they do. All of their outreach is like dropping off brochures, asking people if they have referrals, letting people know what insurances they take, stuff like that. It's just shocking to me. For me, basic business development is bringing something of value, whether it's a training on alcoholism in the workplace, like James is doing a lot of, or talk about suicide prevention or something, but there's some kind of value that you're bringing and say, hey, if you do know people with these struggles, here's how we help that. It just shocks me. The other thing I want to mention really quick is I've been talking to a couple moms lately, and one of the moms, going back to a point James made earlier about community presence and involvement, is how difficult she found some treatment programs were in actually helping them out. So 2 examples she gave. One, she sent her son to a treatment facility and they shaved his head because they felt that he was too vain and that his hair was part of his vanity, and that was a problem. And so all of a sudden her son gets out of this program. She's like, where's your hair? He's like, Mom, they shaved it off. You're like, what? And then another one was he was trying to get into detox on a different round of treatment, and they told him that they would only accept him until like 9 p.m. or something like that. Anyway, they got stuck in traffic. There was some other stuff that happened. They got there at 10 p.m. and the treatment says, well, they're like, you're late. We can't let you in now. It's just like, what? Like, this person needs help, and you're not putting forth the effort to get them. It's just, kind of crazy to me. So I can't say I've ever seen those episodes in person when we're on site with treatment programs. So I don't know how common something like that is. Hopefully not at all, but it was kind of shocking to me. So, James, I mean, you deal a lot with that kind of value add. You deal a lot with the customer facing part, but, thoughts or things that you've seen along those lines?
Yeah. So here's kind of a blanket statement about, because you said something about it's most important to train our employees and then and treat our employees a certain way, and then they'll just automatically treat the client base that way. That just typically the way that this typically goes is we work from the outside in and not the inside out. And frankly, it's just it seems to be easier that way. I think organizations pay a dear price for that in higher cost per acquisition and in turnover rate and all of those things. If we would just take a minute though, and what you just said, this example about somebody not wanting to admit someone at 10 p.m. I think a lot of it just comes down to is that value proposition, and what are we here for really? And you can just look at the way systems are set up, like we're only going to do it these times, or we don't have time to train our employees because we're just so busy. We have other things to worry about. To me, that's an old way of thinking, but it's also, it's a lot harder to do a program right in the beginning. But once you have done that and you've established the culture and the brand, employee loyalty goes up, turnover goes down, AMAs go down, like across the board. And I think the way that a lot of facilities run today is a very short-term mentality rather than looking at, and I know you see that in marketing, you probably see that on your side too, Jacob, is if we would just take a minute to look at the bigger scope, it's really easy to put an investment in your employees rather than just hire and fire every 6 months, or try to understand why something isn't working and then try to solve that rather than just, and frankly, we see that in society too, right? If I've got a professional sports team and and something's not working out, it's really easy to just fire the coach. But the problem is almost always at the very top. Always.
Yeah.
It's about management and ownership and that decision making rather than just taking an easy way out. And I think it's the same here. I think the turnover rate with business development is horrendous. I hear all the time about the stress that they're under. Then there's no training. There's no time to really cultivating and supporting them, and then they just they cut them loose after 4 to 6 months because they didn't get 20 different admits or whatever.
Yep.
So I think it's more about just investing in your people and investing in your brand.
That culture and mission and vision have to be exemplified from the top down or inside out, however you put it, for sure. It's the only way that it's going to get done and shown every day. And then it'll permeate throughout the community and those patients that you have. And, to your point, the opposite is also true, right? If a center has 1, 2, 3 bad showings of the community, with mistakes, whatever, something that they didn't do well, in this age of lower reimbursements that are hard to get and all the other things that are going on in this industry, it's going to put you out pretty quickly. Just like you were saying, if you do these things, it's going to make you grow very quickly on its own. I'll also say that if you're making those mistakes and it's all about the dollar from the outside in, it's going to be hard to survive. This industry is going to change a lot this year.
Right.
I agree. I think something I really like that you hit on, James, was this purpose piece is so important. And what we see in programs when we're doing consultations and helping them build out campaigns is they're too focused on the process sometimes, right? So that detox is a great example. What's your purpose? Your purpose is here to help people. So you should be able to have your team, your frontline staff, figure out a way to help that person, regardless of what the rules are for your center. We were just consulting with a program in Texas, and we were listening to calls, and one of the calls was someone trying to get someone into treatment right away, and the person on the phone was really worried about, do we have their insurance verified, right? Have they made any deposits that they need to make? they wanted to call back and confirm everything. And the person on the phone was like, well, we're coming in right now. Like, it's like, my son has finally made the decision to get into treatment. I've been waiting for this for months. We're coming in now, and the person was too focused on the process. And so that's training, right? It's a culture, it's a training. So it's okay, look, here is the process, but our real purpose is to help people. And so if I have that in the forefront of my mind, I'm going to think about solutions and how to make that work rather than trying to, put up a wall behind the process and say, hey, we got to follow this or we can't come in. Yeah. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I just wanted to quickly mention some different ways to get involved in the community, right? So one is sponsorships and donations, especially around programs that relate to mental health and addiction. We have a client that we did some PR for where it cost them $100, where they had been heavily involved in a local nonprofit for a long time. That local nonprofit was super happy with everything they did. We worked together, built the PR piece, and got it spread throughout the entire city for almost no cost because they had that relationship. They had been providing that support for a long time, and it really helped build their profile. So making sure you're involved with your local firefighters, your police stations, your therapists in the area, your schools, right? Schools are really important. Even if you're going in and just doing presentations at the local school for guidance counselors or teachers, that stuff is invaluable, I think, to your community. And sometimes we forget that there is so much to be done just around us in reducing the stigma. But Jacob and James, any other specific examples of areas that you recommend that they be involved with on the local level?
I like the lunch and learn model a lot, and with depending on what your demographic is, what you specialize in, and go to those places to be a value add and let the beds fill themselves. If you go in with a genuine approach of really wanting to add value and support, I mean, go into an elementary school. How many of those kids will have a brother, a sister, a friend, a parent that is struggling? But I think all too often we want ROI right this second. But if you create the kind of a foundation that we're talking about here that's value-based, they really will start to take care of themselves. But you've got to have some patience with it.
Yeah, I agree. That's not the area that I'm an expert in this industry. I've done it before in some other ones, but that was going to be my comment. The lunch thing, I mean, what can it cost to go to cater lunch to a large company in your community or a union or all those places you just mentioned, Nick, that all have, a lot of people and families are going to be dealing with these sort of things all the time. If it's a few $100, maybe $1,000 to take lunch and just resource and answer questions and say, hey, it's not going to be this everyone's pointing in the community thing. It's going to be very anonymous. We're here to help, and check us out and ask me any questions you have.
Yeah, exactly. And do it in a way that's not a sales pitch.
Right.
Which is, I've been invited to these things, right, by local programs, and it's just a sales pitch. And you could have emailed me your sales presentation. I guess I got free lunch out of it, But that's what people think, right? It's what value did you provide me? I'm not seeing it. They gotta rethink the way that they're doing that approach. So, all right. Well, everyone, as always, I thank you for joining us, and look forward to you checking us out with the next episode here. Make sure to subscribe with the button below, and you'll get automatic notifications when we have a new one. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.